Hey guys, tonight we are going to step back in time, not to a battlefield or a royal court, but to a place far more terrifying for the unprepared, a 19th century British middle-class home. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to become the perfect Victorian housewife. A heads up, you'll probably fail on day one. I certainly would. This isn't a story of grand events, but of quiet, crushing expectations, and the exhaustive, unwritten rulebook for a life lived indoors. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, drop me a comment and let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always nice to know who I'm keeping company with in these late hours. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The front door clicks shut. The sound is heavy, final. Your husband has just left for the day, stepping out into the smoggy, bustling world of commerce, politics, and progress. His world. He won't be back until the gas lamps are lit and dinner is ready to be served. Until then, this house is your entire universe. You stand in the entrance hall, the silence suddenly immense. It's not an empty silence, it's a watchful one, thick with the scent of beeswax, coal smoke, and a faint, floral hint of potpourri. This is your new life. You are no longer the daughter in your father's house. You are the mistress of this one. And it feels less like a promotion and more like a performance, for which you've only just been handed the script. You take a tentative step forward. Your shoes, soft-soled and silent, make no sound on the runner that protects the polished floorboards. Everything is protected here. Everything is covered, hushed, and softened. This is the great Victorian middle-class ideal in action. The doctrine of separate spheres. This is the core principle you must now absorb into your very bones. His world, the public sphere, is a place of struggle, ambition, and moral compromise. Your world, the private sphere, is to be its antidote. It is a haven, a sanctuary, a moral fortress against the grime of the outside world. You are not just its keeper. You are its living embodiment. The responsibility settles on your shoulders like the heavy shawl you wear indoors. Even in summer, you drift into the parlor, the heart of your new domain. Sunlight struggles to get past the heavy velvet curtains, which are drawn just so enough to see, but not enough to allow the outside world to peer in or for the sun to fade the upholstery. The room is full. It's crowded with furniture that stands on clawed feet, a heavy mahogany table gleaming with polish, and countless small objects on every available surface. Vases, figurines, framed prints, books with their spines unbroken. It's a museum of domesticity, and you are its sole, unpaid curator. Your eyes catch on a detail you hadn't noticed before, a perfect example of the anxieties that permeate this world. The grand piano in the corner doesn't just have legs. It has little ruffled trousers or pantalettes tied around them with ribbons. This is a very real, if somewhat niche, practice of the time. The sight of a bare table leg, or worse, a piano leg, was considered scandalously suggestive in some circles, too reminiscent of a human limb to be displayed with decency. So, you cover them. It's a small, almost comical detail, but it speaks volumes about the mindset you must now adopt. Propriety is not just about your actions. It's about controlling the very environment around you, taming even the furniture into submission. This home is your kingdom, but also your cage. Historians still debate the true nature of this arrangement. Was the domestic sphere a prison that stifled women's talents and ambitions, a gilded cage as it was later called? Or was it a genuine source of power and influence? By controlling the home, you control the family's social standing, its health, its spiritual well-being, and the moral compass of the next generation. You manage the budget, you direct the staff. You are the CEO of a small but incredibly complex organization. From this quiet, overstuffed parlor, you wield a different kind of power, softer perhaps, but pervasive. It's a question without a simple answer, one that likely depends on the individual woman, her husband, and her resources. For now, though, you don't feel powerful. You feel overwhelmed. Every polished surface seems to accuse you of future fingerprints. Every silent object seems to hold a standard you are expected to meet. The silence isn't peaceful, it's a blank page you are terrified to mark incorrectly. You are supposed to be the angel in the house, a concept we'll explore more deeply. But right now, you just feel like a ghost, haunting rooms that don't yet feel like your own. Your entire life is shrunk to the dimensions of these few rooms, and the path to mastering them feels impossibly long and fraught with invisible tripwires. The clock on the mantelpiece ticks, each second a reminder that your work has already begun. That phrase, angel in the house, echoes in the quiet parlor. It's not just a casual compliment, it's your job description. The term itself was popularized by a wildly successful narrative poem by a man named Coventry Patmore, first published a few years ago in 1854. You probably have a copy of it somewhere in this very room, bound in decorative leather, its pages crisp and clean. It's the kind of book a husband gives to his new wife. It's a love story, yes, but it's also an instruction manual. Patmore's poem tells the story of his courtship and marriage, celebrating his wife as the perfect woman. And what does this perfection look like? It looks like complete selflessness. The angel is gentle, charming, and eternally sympathetic. She has no desires of her own, finding fulfillment only in serving her husband and children. She is the calm in his storm, the purity that washes away the moral stains he might pick up in the grubby world of business. She is patient, sacrificing, and above all, utterly devoted. This isn't just poetry. It's a cultural phenomenon that has seeped into the very foundations of your society. Sermons echo its sentiments. Advice manuals for young ladies prescribe its virtues. It is the gold standard against which you and every other woman of your class will be measured. To fail at being the angel is not just a personal shortcoming, it's a moral failure, a tear in the sacred fabric of the home. You look at your own hands, resting in your lap. They are supposed to be soft and pale, perhaps skilled at needlepoint or the piano, but never rough from labor. Your mind is supposed to be a garden of pleasant thoughts, not a thicket of ambition or intellectual frustration. And this angelic ideal extends to your physical being in ways that might seem bizarre to a future observer. The perfect woman is not robust and hardy. She is delicate, almost ethereal. There is a strange glamour attached to fragility. A slight, lingering cough, a tendency toward gentle melancholy, even a well-timed faint. These are not necessarily seen as medical problems, but as signs of a refined and sensitive nature. It's a subtle performance of being too pure for this world. This is why nearly every middle-class parlor, including yours, has a chaise lounge or fainting couch. It's a piece of furniture designed specifically for a graceful collapse. The cult of the female invalid is a very real, very strange part of your world. A woman confined to her couch with nerves or a mysterious fatigue is often seen as the epitome of femininity, an object of beauty and pity, blessedly removed from all worldly courtesans. You must be healthy enough to run the household and bear children, of course, but looking just a little bit breakable. That's considered being attractive. You run a hand over the plush velvet of your own fainting couch. Is this your destiny? To be a beautiful, passive ornament in a beautiful, passive room? Here lies one of the great questions that historians still grapple with. Was the angel in the house ideal to love oppression? A clever way to keep women powerless and out of public life by convincing them that their cage was, in fact, a pedestal? Or did women themselves find a unique form of power within this role? The argument is complex. On one hand, you are denied a voice in politics, law, and business. Your education has been carefully curated to remove any unfeminine subjects like science or economics. Your entire legal identity is, for the most part, absorbed by your husband's. But on the other hand, within these four walls, your authority is meant to be absolute. You are the moral arbiter. Your husband is expected to defer to you in matters of religion, child-rearing, and social etiquette. You are the gatekeeper of your family's reputation. While he makes the money, you are the one who transforms that raw income into the delicate tapestry of a respectable lifestyle. Some women, historians argue, wielded this moral superiority like a weapon, expertly managing their husbands and shaping their families while outwardly performing the role of the submissive angel. They became masters of passive influence, achieving their goals not through direct confrontation, but through gentle persuasion, emotional appeals, and the powerful threat of disappointment. Was it a form of strategic adaptation or a subtle surrender? The debate continues, a quiet academic murmur beneath the loud certainty of the era's guidebooks. For you right now, it feels less like a strategy and more like an impossible balancing act. You have to be passive yet in control, modest yet the center of the home, ignorant of the world yet wise enough to guide its future citizens. You are to be a creature of pure spirit, somehow tasked with the deeply practical, deeply material job of managing laundry lists, butcher's bills, and the constant, creeping war against household dust. A slight breeze, carrying the scent of coal smoke from a neighbor's chimney, rustles the lace curtains. It feels like a whisper from the outside world you've been tasked with keeping at bay. Your angelic duty begins now, and it starts with the tiny, visible details of your kingdom. Your gaze drifts around the parlor, truly taking it in not as a guest, but as its warden, and you slowly realize the fundamental truth of this space. This room is not for living in. This is the stage. This is the public face of your private world, and it is designed entirely for the eyes of others. The family you, your husband, your future children, will not lounge here in the evenings. You won't put your feet up on this stiff, horsehair stuffed sofa. You will likely spend your private hours in a smaller, less formal back parlor or a sitting room upstairs, a space with comfortable chairs and fewer breakable objects. This front parlor is reserved for one primary purpose: receiving guests. It is a three-dimensional advertisement for your family status, taste, and, most importantly, your skill as a household manager. The fireplace is the room's heart, its mantelpiece of cold marble crowded with ornaments and crowned by a large ornate mirror. The furniture is dark, heavy, and polished to a gleam. It's arranged not for comfort or ease of movement, but for conversation, and a very specific, formal kind of conversation at that. Two chairs might be angled toward each other, close enough for polite discourse, but far enough to prevent any unseemly familiarity. There is a rigid geometry to the layout, a silent choreography that dictates where guests will sit and how they will interact. Every single object, from the patterned Axminster carpet on the floor to the geisel, i.e. or hanging from the ceiling, has been chosen to send a message of prosperity and propriety. And there are so many objects. The Victorian middle-class sensibility has a fear of empty surfaces, a condition a future would might call horror vacui. Every table, shelf, and mantelpiece is a testament to this, laden with what is collectively known as bric-a-brac. You see porcelain shepherdess cess, framed silhouettes of ancestors you've never met, albums of family photographs, and books that are meant to be seen rather than read. This clutter is a sign of wealth. It proves you have disposable income to spend on non-essentials, and just as crucially, that you can afford the domestic staff required to dust it all. Your eyes land on a particularly telling example of the era's mindset: a large glass dome, or cloche, sitting on a side table. Underneath its airtight seal is a cluster of taxiderm hummingbirds, their jewel-toned feathers perfectly preserved, their wings frozen mid-flight around a spray of artificial flowers. This is the Victorian ideal under glass. It's a captured piece of nature, tamed, beautified, and sealed away from the corrupting influence of dust, decay, and time itself. It is beautiful, but it is also utterly lifeless. It cannot be touched, it cannot be smelled, it cannot change. In many ways, it is a perfect metaphor for you, the angel in the house. You are also to be preserved under the glass dome of the home, beautiful and perfect, but sealed off from the messy reality of the world outside. This passion for taxidermy, for wax flowers, for anything that freezes a moment of fragile beauty, is everywhere. It's a deep-seated need to control and contain the wildness of nature, bringing it indoors only after its spirit has been safely extinguished. Why all this stuff? Historians have long debated the meaning of this elaborate domestic clutter. Was it simply conspicuous consumption, a way of keeping up with the Joneses, or in your case, the Chadwicks and the Pembertoness, by visibly displaying your material success? Every objective testament to your husband's rising income, there is certainly an element of that. The sheer volume of factory-produced goods available for the first time meant that decorating your home became a new and competitive middle-class sport. But other historians argue for a more sentimental interpretation. They suggest that these objects were not just status symbols, but emotional anchors. In a world of rapid industrial change, urban growth, and fluctuating fortunes, the home was a sanctuary of stability, and these objects were its relics. That seashell on the mantelpiece was just a shell. It was a souvenir from a rare seaside holiday, a tangible piece of a happy memory. That porcelain dog was just a figurine. It was a gift from a beloved aunt. From this perspective, the parlor is not a showroom but a living scrapbook. It tells the story of your family, cementing your identity through a carefully curated collection of memories and heirlooms. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in between. The things you fill your house with are both a public performance of status and a private collection of meaning. For you, standing in the center of this silent, crowded room, it is simply a catalogue of your duties. Each polished surface is a future battleground against dust. Each delicate object is a potential casualty of a careless maid. The arrangement is a puzzle you must maintain perfectly. This room is the ultimate test. A visitor in the space of a 15-minute call will judge your entire character based on the gloss of your furniture, the health of your ferns, and the arrangement of your bric-a-brac. The clock on the mantelpiece ticks on, a quiet, metallic heartbeat in the body of the house. Time is passing, and the day is a schedule of tasks that must be perfectly met. All day the house holds its breath. Your efforts, the dusting, the flower arranging, the consulting with the cook, all of it points toward a single moment, the sound of a key in the front door. He is coming home. Your husband is crossing the threshold, returning from that alien planet known as the public sphere. He is the bridge between your world and that one, and his return is the most significant event of your daily calendar. The entire household is an intricate machine designed to receive and restore him. The fire has been lit in the parlor. His slippers are warming by the hearth. The smells of dinner are just beginning to drift up from the kitchen, a carefully timed promise of comfort to come. When he steps inside, he brings the city with him. His gray coat carries the scent of coal smog, damp wool, and perhaps the faint, metallic smell of money. He is tired. His face is etched with the day's struggles, the competitions, the compromises. Your first duty as the angel is to erase all of it. You greet him not with your own troubles or anxieties, but with a serene smile. You are the calm harbor to his storm-tossed ship. You help him out of his coat, the symbolic shedding of his public self. You hand him his slippers. And with that simple exchange, he is no longer a man of business but the master of the house. He is home. This transition is more than just a change of clothes. It's a legal and philosophical transformation. The moment you married him, you cease to exist as an independent legal entity. This is the doctrine of sea overture, a legal principle inherited from common law. You are a femme covert, a covered woman. Your property became his property. Any wages you might earn would legally belong to him. You cannot sign contracts or incur debt without his permission. He is legally responsible for you as a father is for a child. This is the bedrock of your relationship. He is not just your partner. He is your guardian, your master. This is not seen as oppressive. It is presented as a natural, protective order. He braves the harsh world so that you don't have to. In return, your entire existence is devoted to making his refuge perfect. You see the separation of worlds in small, specific rituals. Perhaps after dinner he will retreat to his study, a deeply masculine space. Usually the only room where the decorative scheme is allowed to be dark and somber, with leather chairs and shelves of serious-looking books. And if he wishes to smoke a cigar, he will don a specific garment, a smoking jacket. This is not just a fashion choice. It's a piece of domestic technology. These jackets, often made of velvet or silk with quilted lapels, are designed to absorb the smoke and protect his form of evening clothes from the odor. He might even wear a small, tousled smoking cap to keep the smell out of his hair. This entire ritual is a perfect example of the separate spheres in action. A man's worldly habit, tobacco, is permitted within the home, but it must be contained. Its impurities must not be allowed to permeate the feminine purity of the main living spaces. It is your job to ensure the jacket is aired and cleaned, managing the residue of his world. So, who really holds the power in this arrangement? The law is clear, he does. He is the patriarch, the head of the household in every legal and financial sense. But historians have long debated the gap between theory and practice. Was the husband truly an absolute monarch in his own home? Or was he more of a constitutional king who reigned but did not always rule? The argument for female soft power suggests that while you have no formal authority, your influence is immense. You manage his social life, his comfort, his children's upbringing, and his moral well-being. A clever wife could become an expert in the art of persuasion, learning how to manage her husband so effectively that he believed every decision was his own. By controlling the emotional climate of the home, you can reward him with peace and harmony, or punish him with subtle disapproval and a tense atmosphere. It's a quiet, domestic form of politics, played out not in parliaments, but over the dinner table. He sinks into his favorite armchair by the fire, the newspaper, his link to the outside world in his hand. He sighs, the sound of a man letting go of the day's armor. The house has worked its magic. You have worked your magic. For a few hours the noisy, dirty, competitive world is banished. There is only the ticking clock, the crackling fire, and the ordered peace of the haven you have created. You have fulfilled your most sacred duty. You have welcomed the traveler home. And now the evening's precise and demanding schedule of dinner, conversation, and quiet family time is about to begin. The clock on the mantelpiece doesn't just tell the time, it commands it. It's steady. Rhythmic ticking is the true master of this house. Your life is not a series of spontaneous moments. It is a meticulously planned timetable, a domestic railway schedule where every event must run precisely on time. The peace and quiet of the household, that seemingly effortless calm you are meant to embody, is the result of a rigid, behind-the-scenes tyranny of the clock. This is the new science of household management, and you are its chief practitioner. Your day began hours before your husband returned, long before the sun had fully risen. You were up with the servants or shortly after, to unlock the pantry and storerooms. Your first and perhaps most crucial meeting of the day is with your cook. This is not a casual chat about what to have for dinner. This is a formal conference. Use it at a sturdy kitchen table, a ledger book and pencil in your hand. You discuss the menu for the entire day, breakfast, the children's midday meal, and the multi-course dinner that will be the evening's centerpiece. You review the larder, noting what needs to be ordered from the butcher, the grocer, the baker. Every penny must be accounted for. Wasting food is not just inefficient. It is a sign of poor moral character, a failure of your duty to be thrifty and resourceful. After this, you conduct your morning inspection. You walk through the rooms that have already been cleaned by the maid, your eyes sharp, looking for any lapse. Is the silver polished to a perfect shine? Are the ashes properly cleared from the grates? Is there a speck of dust on the picture frames? You might even wear a pair of white gloves, running a finger along the mantelpiece not out of spite, but as a formal quality check. This is your factory floor, and respectability is the product you manufacture. Any defect reflects poorly on the management. The late morning is for your personal administrative tasks. You sit at your small, elegant writing desk in the back parlor. This is the time for correspondence. You answer letters from family, write invitations, and, most importantly, send out acceptances or regrets for invitations you have received. Every letter must be penned in a clear, feminine hand, the language polite and formal. You also manage the household accounts, tallying the butcher's bill against your budget, your ledger a testament to your financial stewardship. The afternoon, from around 3 to 5 p.m., is the designated time for the ritual we will soon explore in more depth, the morning call. It's confusingly named, but this is the window in which you either receive visitors or go out to visit other ladies in their homes, leaving your calling card if they are not in. This is not a casual drop-in. It is a formal, scheduled part of the social work week. At around 5, it's time for the children's hour. This is the one strictly democrated period of the day when you are expected to interact directly with your own children. They are brought down from the nursery scrubbed and neatly dressed to spend an hour with you in the parlor. You might read them a story with a strong moral lesson, listen to them recite their lessons, or simply observe their polite play. This interaction is loving, but it is also formal and contained. Once the hour is up, Nurse takes them back upstairs and the adult world of the evening begins. Why this obsession with chopping the day into such rigid blocks? Historians see it as a direct reflection of the industrial world your husband inhabits. The logic of the factory, efficiency, division of labor, and the tyranny of the clock has seeped into the home. Your household manual, perhaps the famous Mrs. Beaton's Book of Household Management, treats the home like a business. It's a massive tome, filled not just with recipes, but with timetables, staffing plans, and seasonal charts. Mrs. Beaton tells you which month is best for marmalade, the precise number of minutes to boil a potato, and the specific duties of a between-maid versus a parlor maid. It transformed the art of housekeeping into a scientific system. This was an entirely new way of thinking about domestic life. But was this system liberating or suffocating? This is a question historians still ponder. For some women, this new science of household management may have been empowering. It professionalized their role. They were not just housewives. They were managers, administrators, domestic engineers. Their work had a system, a purpose, a tangible set of skills that could be learned and perfected. It gave them a sense of authority and control over their domain. But for others, this constant scheduling created immense pressure. There was no room for error, no time for rest. The home was no longer a place of organic comfort, but a machine that demanded constant, vigilant maintenance. A delayed dinner was not just a minor inconvenience. It was a system failure, a black mark on your record as a manager. So as the evening deepens and the family sits in the quiet parlor, reading or doing needlework, you know this piece is not an accident. It is the product of your relentless, invisible labor, all choreographed by the unblinking eye of the clock on the mantel. The hands move steadily towards bedtime, but you know it's only a temporary pause. Tomorrow, the clock will strike again, and the entire, exhaustive schedule will begin anew. That clock-driven schedule, the entire complex machinery of your home, runs on a hidden engine, your servants. They are the invisible gears, the silent pistons that make the effortless grace of your lifestyle possible. You must understand this from the outset. You are a manager, not a laborer. Your hands are to remain soft, your brow unfurrowed by exertion. You do not scrub the floors, but you inspect them. You do not cook the meals, but you plan them. Your primary domestic skill is the delicate, and often difficult, art of managing other people. Your staff, even in a modest middle-class home like this one, forms a distinct hierarchy. Down in the kitchen, a world of steam, cast iron, and savory smells, reigns the cook. She is the most important, and often the most temperamental, member of your staff. A good cook is hard to find, and she knows it. Your daily morning meeting with her is a negotiation, a delicate dance of authority and respect. You hold the power of the purse, but she holds the secrets of a perfect roast and a light pastry. Keeping her happy is essential to the smooth running of your entire operation. Then there is the housemaid, or if you are slightly more prosperous, a pair of them. The housemaiden, the parlor maid. The housemaid does the heavy lifting, the scrubbing, the great cleaning, the carrying of coal and hot water up endless flights of stairs. The parlor maid is the public face of the domestic staff. She is the one who answers the door, who serves a table, and who must therefore be neater, quicker, and more presentable. She wears a crisper apron, a whiter cap. She is chosen for her quiet demeanor and her ability to become almost invisible when in a room with the family. If you have children, there is also a nurse, who rules her own separate kingdom upstairs in the nursery, a domain you enter as a respected visitor. Your relationship with these women who live under your roof is one of the most complex you will ever have to navigate. They share your home, but they are not your family. You are responsible for their moral well-being as well as their work. It is your duty to ensure they attend church, that they are not frivolous, and that their conduct is always modest and deferential. And this control extends into their private lives that seem shocking to a later age. For instance, a common rule in households like yours is a strict prohibition on followers. This means your maids are not allowed to have male visitors. A young man waiting by the servant's entrance would be grounds for instant dismissal. The rare time off is strictly regulated. You are, in essence, their guardian, their employer, and their jailer, all rolled into one. Historians are deeply divided on the true nature of this relationship. Was it a purely exploitative system, a form of domestic serfdom where young women worked grueling hours for pitiful wages, with no privacy and little hope of advancement? Many historical accounts certainly paint this picture. Diaries and letters from servants tell of constant exhaustion, loneliness, and the humiliation of being subject to the whims of a demanding mistress. From this perspective, the tranquil middle-class home was built directly on the foundation of an underpaid, overworked, and captive female workforce. However, other historians offer a more nuanced view. They argue that for many young women from impoverished rural families, domestic service was the best available option. It was safer than the brutal, dangerous work in factories. It provided a bed, regular meals, and a uniform, often the best clothes they had ever owned. A kind mistress might take a genuine, paternalistic interest in her servants, teaching them to read and write, nursing them when they were sick, and helping them save a little money. In this light, the relationship was not simply one of exploitation but a complex, if deeply unequal, form of paternalistic care. It was a system that offered security and a degree of social mobility in a world with very few safety nets. The academic debate continues, a quiet but persistent argument about class, gender, and power played out in the private space of the home. For you, the reality lies in the day-to-day management. You summon them not by shouting, but with a gentle pull on a velvet cord next to the fireplace. This connects to a complex system of wires running through the walls, ending in a row of bells hung in the servants' quarters or kitchen. Each bell has a different tone or a different label: parlor, dining room, master bedroom. The constant, jingling summons is the soundtrack to their lives. They are expected to answer your call immediately, silently, and ready to receive their orders. They are the unseen hands that will now clear away the imaginary traces of the day, preparing the stage for the next act in your carefully scheduled life, the social ritual of the afternoon call. The afternoon has arrived, and with it comes one of the most demanding performances of your week: social calling. The entire system is governed by a small, stiff piece of cardboard, an object of immense power and complexity: the calling card, or as it's more commonly known, the visiting card. You possess a small, elegant case made of silver or mother of pearl, filled with these cards. Your name is engraved on them in a simple, clear script: Mrs. Robert Finch, not Eleanor Finch. Your own name has been subsumed by his. That card is your official representative in the intricate world of middle-class social networking. Mastering the etiquette of the calling card is as crucial as mastering the management of your cook. It is a silent language, and a single mistake can lead to social ruin. Let's say you've just moved into this neighborhood. You cannot simply go and introduce yourself to your neighbors. You must wait. You wait for the established residents to call on you first. When a lady arrives at your door for her first formal visit, she is officially welcoming you into the neighborhood social circle. Once she has made that first call, you are then obligated to return it, usually within a week. This tit-for-tat exchange of visits is the very foundation of your social life. When you go out to make your calls, you sit in your carriage or a hired one if your means are more modest, and your driver or a footman will take your card to the door. The parlor maid who answers will be asked if her mistress is at home. This is a crucial phrase. At home does not necessarily mean the lady is physically present in the house. It is a code. It means she is prepared and willing to receive visitors. If the maid returns with the message, Mrs. Thimberton is not at home, it could mean she is out, or it could be a polite fiction, meaning she is busy, unwell, or simply does not wish to see anyone. It is a social white lie understood by all parties, and it saves everyone from potential awkwardness. If the lady of the house is not at home, you then perform the most important ritual of all. You leave your card. The number of cards you leave, and how you leave them, is a complex piece of nonverbal communication. You leave one of your own cards. You also leave two of your husband's cards, one for the master of the house, and one for the mistress. If there are other adult women in the household, like a grown daughter or a live-in mother-in-law, you must leave a card for each of them. But here is the strange, almost comically specific detail. To indicate that this visit was intended for all the ladies of the house, You turn down one corner of your card. The specific corner you bend might even signal the reason for your visit. One corner for a simple call, another for a visit of condolence. It's a tiny, folded piece of social origami, a message that only the initiated can read. Why this obsession with a small piece of paper? Historians see the rise of the calling card as a direct response to the new challenges of urban life. In a village, everyone knows everyone. Reputations are built over generations. But in a burgeoning city like London or Manchester, you are surrounded by strangers. The calling card became a tool for creating and maintaining a distinct, knowable social circle within the anonymous chaos of the metropolis. It was a gatekeeping mechanism. Your circle of acquaintance was defined by whose card sat in the silver tray on your hall table. It was a way of vetting people, of ensuring that you only associated with those of the proper class and reputation. The debate among academics often revolves around whether this system was primarily about social climbing or social defense. Was the main goal to use your calling card to push your way into a higher social circle, networking your way up the precarious middle-class ladder? Or was it more of a defensive measure, a way of creating a fortress of respectability to keep out the wrong sort of people? The answer is likely both. For an ambitious family, the card was a tool of advancement. For an established family, it was a way of policing the boundaries of their world. The calling card system was both a ladder and a wall. Back in your hall, you have a silver tray, or perhaps a porcelain bowl specifically for this purpose. The cards left by your visitors are displayed there for a short time. They are a public testament to your social standing. An empty card tray is a sign of social failure. A full one is a badge of honor. As the afternoon wears on, you wait for the sound of your own doorbell, ready to give the instruction at home, and begin the carefully choreographed performance of a formal afternoon visit. The doorbell rings. The parlor maid, her apron crisp, goes to answer it. A moment later, she appears at the parlor door, a silver tray in her hand. On it rests a calling card. She presents it to you, and you give a slight nod. "I am at home, Mary. The performance has begun. You smooth your dress, adopt a pleasant and serene expression, and wait. The visitor, perhaps the formidable Mrs. Chadwick from 2 streets over, is divested of her cloak in the hall and is now being escorted to your door. This is the morning call, and despite its name, it almost always takes place between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. The rules of this encounter are as rigid as the corset you are wearing. A formal call should last no less than 15 minutes, but no more than 20. To leave sooner would be indulgently abrupt. To stay longer would be an imposition on your hostess as time. You must constantly, but subtly, be aware of the clock on the mantelpiece. Your guest enters, and you rise to greet her. You do not offer a handshake. That would be far too familiar for a formal call. A slight bow of the head, a pleasant smile, and a gesture toward the designated guest chair is all that is required. The conversation that follows is an art form in itself. It must be light, pleasant, and entirely free of controversy. Acceptable topics include the weather, the health of one's family, but only in general positive terms, a recent concert or public lecture of a suitable, improving nature, and the good works of local charities. Unacceptable topics are numerous and constitute a social minefield. You must never mention anything related to business or money. You must not gossip in any overt or malicious way. Though subtle, coded inquiries about mutual acquaintances are a key part of the game. Politics, unless spoken of in the vaguest of terms that echo your husband's presumed views, is absolutely forbidden. And under no circumstances should you mention anything that hints at bodily functions, personal struggle, or emotional distress. The conversation is to be like the surface of the parlor table, polished, smooth, and reflecting only pleasantries. During this delicate verbal dance, you might offer a refreshment, but this too is strictly governed. A full tea service is not for a morning call. That is reserved for a more intimate gathering. For a formal call, you might offer a small glass of sherry or a biscuit, but nothing more. The focus is not on hospitality in the modern sense, but on the ritual of the visit itself. Here you might encounter one of the stranger, more specific pieces of etiquette from the period, the handling of gloves. A lady making a call does not remove her gloves. She keeps them on for the entire duration of the visit. To remove your gloves would be to signal a degree of intimacy and comfort that is simply not appropriate for this formal context. If you are offered that biscuit, you are expected to nibble it gracefully while still wearing your tight-fitting kid leather gloves. It's an awkward, impractical maneuver, but it is the correct thing to do. The gloves act as a symbolic barrier, a constant reminder that this is a public performance, not a private moment of relaxation. The purpose of these incredibly stilted, unrestricted visits is a subject of some historical discussion. On the surface, they seem utterly pointless, a way to fill an afternoon with meaningless chatter. But historians argue they served a crucial function. This was women's work. This was the slow, patient weaving of the social fabric. Through these calls, you built networks of mutual support, exchanged vital information, albeit in coded language, and enforced the shared values of your community. It was here that reputations were quietly made or broken. Mrs. Chadwick might casually mention that the young Mrs. Peterson's curtains are frightfully cheap, and in that single sentence, Mrs. Peterson's social standing takes a hit. It's a system of social surveillance conducted over teacups and biscuits. Was this a system created by women, for women, as a way to wield power in a world that denied them formal authority? Or were they simply enforcing a patriarchal system, acting as the unpaid police force of a social order designed by men? The debate is ongoing. Some historians argue that this was a genuinely female sphere of influence, where women acted as the arbiters of taste and morality, and that men were often excluded from and baffled by its intricate rules. Others contend that these women were merely gatekeepers for their husbands' ambitions, ensuring the family only associated with others who could be useful to his career. They were policing the boundaries of class on his behalf. As the clock hand creeps towards the 20-minute mark, you subtly guide the conversation to a close. Your guest, sensing the cue, will rise to take her leave. You walk her to the parlor door, but no further. You exchange another set of polite smiles and nods. The parlor maid escorts her to the front door. It clicks shut. The performance is over. You can exhale. You glance at the card tray, a quiet register of your social obligations. The visit has been successfully navigated. Your reputation, and by extension your family's, is secure for another day. The quiet satisfaction of having successfully navigated Mrs. Chadwick's visit fades quickly, replaced by a much larger, more menacing shadow on your social calendar. The morning call was a short, sharp skirmish. The dinner party is the full-scale war. This is the ultimate test of your abilities as a hostess or manager, and an angel in the house. Your husband might mention it casually. "We should have the Parkers over for dinner, dear. He is a man I need to cultivate." But for you, that simple sentence sets in motion a campaign of military precision, fraught with anxiety and the potential for spectacular failure. The planning begins weeks in advance with the sending of the invitations. Penned on your thickest, creamiest stationery, the wording is formal and precise, and then you wait. The days spent waiting for the replies are a quiet torment. A swift acceptance from a high-status guest is a triumph. A polite refusal is a minor disaster that requires you to recalibrate your entire guest list, like a general moving troops on a map. The goal is a perfectly balanced table of 8 to 12 people. Any more is unmanageable, any fewer feels insignificant. Once the guest list is confirmed, the true terror begins. The menu. You and your cook will spend hours in consultation. Your copy of Mrs. Beaton's open on the kitchen table. A middle-class dinner party is a relentless parade of courses. It begins with soup, perhaps one clear, one thick. Then comes the fish course. Then the entrees, small, savory dishes. Then the main event, the roast, a great joint of beef or a saddle of mutton. This is followed by a course of game, pheasant perhaps, or grouse. And then you descend into a dizzying array of desserts, jellies that tremble, elaborate blancmanges in architectural molds, pies, tarts, and fresh fruit. It is a performance of overwhelming abundance, designed to impress upon your guests the depth of your husband's prosperity. And at the center of this display, you might find the year's ultimate status symbol, the pineapple. This exotic fruit is astonishingly expensive, a symbol of wealth and global trade. To have a whole pineapple as the centerpiece of your dessert table is the Victorian equivalent of parking a luxury sports car in your driveway. It is such a potent symbol that a strange cottage industry has sprung up around it. If you can't quite afford to buy one, you can actually rent a pineapple for the evening. A man will deliver it just before your guests arrive and whisk it away after they've gone. It's on its silver platter, magnificent and untouched, a silent, spiky testament to your success. A success that may be entirely fictional. Historians have long debated the true purpose of these excessive meals. Was this conspicuous consumption at its most extreme a way for the newly wealthy middle classes to solidify their social standing by literally forcing their success down their guests' throats? Every extra course, every expensive ingredient was another point scored in the relentless game of social competition. The food itself was secondary to what it represented: money, stability, and the labor of a well-managed household. However, some scholars argue it was more than just a display of wealth. It was a carefully constructed piece of theater, and you, the hostess, were its director. This theatrical view suggests that the dinner party was one of the few arenas where a middle-class woman could express her creativity, taste, and authority. You chose the menu. You designed the floral arrangements. You choreographed the service. You were creating an experience. The ultimate goal was to make this enormously complicated and stressful event appear completely effortless. Your guests should feel that this magnificent feast simply materialized out of a haze of goodwill and hospitality. Your own frantic, behind-the-scenes planning, your arguments with the cook, your terror that the fish would be overcooked, all of that must remain completely invisible. Your performance is one of serene, angelic calm. The most nerve-wracking task of all is the seating plan. This is a delicate and dangerous piece of social geometry. You must place the most important female guest to the right of your husband, and the most important male guest to your right. You must never seat a husband and wife together. They have ample time to talk at home. You must try to place people with compatible conversation styles next to each other, creating little pockets of pleasant chatter. And you must be acutely aware of any rivalries or disagreements. Placing two enemies next to each other could doom the entire evening. You sketch it out on paper, moving names around, balancing status and personality, trying to solve a puzzle that has no perfect solution. The hour approaches. The dining room is ready. The table gleams with polished silver and starched white linen. Every glass is in its precise place. The army of servants has been briefed. You retreat upstairs to dress, your heart pounding a nervous rhythm against your ribs. You put on your best silk dress, arrange your hair, and paste a calm, welcoming smile onto your face. The doorbell rings. They are here. The curtain is rising on your most important performance. The guests have assembled in the parlor, a rustling sea of silken starched collars. The parlor maid has announced that dinner is served. Now comes a moment of delicate choreography, the procession into the dining room. Your husband offers his arm to the most important female guest and leads the way. The most important male guest offers his arm to you. The other guests pair off according to the strict, invisible rankings of social precedence. You are the last to enter the dining room, the captain on the bridge, overseeing the maneuver. You take your seat at the head of the long table, your husband at the foot, and for a moment you survey the scene. The candlelight glints on the silver. The faces of your guests are turned towards you expectant. This is your stage. Now, you must not only be a manager, but also a masterful conversationalist. Your primary role is to keep the river of talk flowing smoothly. You must gently guide the conversation, ensuring no single person dominates and no awkward silences fall. You initiate a topic with the gentleman on your right, then gracefully turn to the gentleman on your left, drawing them both into a pleasant, three-way chat. You must also keep an eye on the entire table, ready to lob a conversational lifeline to anyone who seems stranded or left out. Mr. Parker, you might go down the table. I believe you are a keen fisherman. Mr. Davies was just telling me about his recent trip to Scotland. It is a demanding, mentally taxing performance, all while appearing to be casually enjoying your meal. And what a meal it is, or rather, what a meal it appears to be for your guests. For you, eating is the least important part of the evening. You must eat lightly, almost symbolically. To be seen tucking in with gusto would be terribly unfeminine. Your focus is on others, but you're also navigating a bewildering arsenal of cutlery. At your place setting, there is a formidable array of knives, forks, and spoons, each with a specific purpose. There is a fish fork, a meat fork, a salad fork, a dessert fork. There is a specific spoon for soup, another for pudding, another for your sorbet. Using the wrong utensil for the wrong course is a small but telling sign that you are not quite to the manner born. One of the most peculiar of these is the asparagus fork, or sometimes a small set of personal asparagus tongs. This vegetable presents a particular challenge, and this specialized tool is invented to manage it with grace. The conversation, like the menu at a morning call, is strictly policed. The safe topics are the same: the weather, travel, art, literature of the approved kind. But the great, unwritten rule of the dinner party is this: you must not be too clever. This applies especially to you, the hostess. To be witty is acceptable. To be knowledgeable is permissible, within limits. But to be truly intellectual, to express a strong, original opinion, or heaven forbid, to correct a man on a point of fact, that is a social sin of the highest order. It would be seen as aggressive, unfeminine, and deeply embarrassing for your husband. You are to be a charming echo, a beautiful sounding board, not a source of original ideas. Your education, designed to make you a pleasing companion, was not intended to be put on display. Historians have often debated the reality of this intellectual suppression. Did women genuinely internalize this ideal, believing that a blue-stocking, an intellectual woman, was an unattractive creature? Or was this another public performance, a deliberate dumbing down for the benefit of the fragile male ego? Diaries and letters from the period suggest a complex reality. Many women wrote privately of their frustration, of having to bite their tongues while men confidently spouted nonsense about topics they themselves had studied deeply. They read voraciously in private philosophy, science, political theory, and then presided over dinner tables where such topics were forbidden. It was a life of intellectual code switching, of maintaining a placid, unintellectual facade, while nurturing a rich and complex inner world. The debate touches on the very nature of intelligence and power. Was the woman who could flawlessly manage the egos of 12 people, orchestrate a 10-course meal, and keep a conversation sparkling for 3 hours, truly less intelligent than the man next to her pontificating about railway gauges? Or was she simply deploying a different, and perhaps more demanding, kind of intelligence, a social and emotional intelligence that was essential for the functioning of her world, yet completely unrecognized and unvalued by it? The dinner is drawing to a close. You catch your husband's eye. He gives a barely perceptible nod. You gather the eyes of the other ladies at the table. "Shall we?" you say softly. And at this signal, all the women rise as one and retreat to the parlor for coffee and quiet conversation. The men are left alone at the table, free to pass the port, smoke their cigars, and finally discuss the real topics of business and politics, their deep voices rumbling in the now female-free zone. Your part of the performance is only half over, but the most intellectually restrictive phase has passed. For a brief time, in the company of other women, you can let the mask of charming ignorance slip, just a little. You stand in the parlor, the scent of coffee mingling with the faint perfume of your female guests. You have successfully withdrawn, leaving the men to their important politics. This moment, surrounded by other women, is a brief respite, but the performance is not over. Your appearance, from your meticulously arranged hair to the tips of your satin shoes, is still under intense scrutiny. Your dress, in particular, is a testament to your status, your taste, and your adherence to the strict codes of femininity. It is also, in many ways, a beautiful cage. Let's begin from the inside out. Before the dress, before even the petticoats, comes the corset. This is the foundational garment of your entire silhouette. It is not the soft, flexible item of a later era. This is a serious piece of engineering, constructed from stiff fabric, reinforced with hollow-bone strips baleen, and tightened with laces at the back until your breathing becomes a shallow, ladylike affair. Its purpose is to create the ideal female form of the moment, a tiny, wasp-like waist. It cinches you in, pushing your bust up and your hips out, transforming your torso into a rigid glass shape. It is restrictive, uncomfortable, and worn every single day. Getting into it requires the assistance of a maid, who will place a knee in your back to get the maximum leverage on the laces. Next come the layers. Over your chemise and drawers and over the corset, you wear a corset cover. Then come the petticoats. Not one but many. 6, 7, even more made of linen or cotton. Some of them stiffened with horsehair. This is where the term crinoline originally comes from, or quilted for volume. The goal is to create a wide bell-shaped skirt. The sheer weight of these layers is considerable, a constant, heavy presence around your legs. By the mid-1850s, this problem of weight is partially solved by a revolutionary new invention, the cage crinoline. This is a collapsible framework of flexible steel hoops, suspended from the waist by tapes. It is much lighter than the layers of petticoats, but it presents its own set of challenges. It is, in essence, a personal tent. You have to learn a whole new way of moving, of sitting down, of navigating doorways without the cage bouncing and tilting in an unladylike manner. Finally, over all of this architecture comes the dress itself. Made of silk, taffeta, or fine wool, it is a testament to the more is more aesthetic of your time. The bodice is tight, fitting smoothly over the corset. The sleeves are often wide and elaborate. And the skirt. Oh, the skirt. It is a vast expanse of fabric, often decorated with ruffles, flounces, ribbons, and fringe. Every available surface is an opportunity for more decoration. The sheer amount of fabric required for a single dress is staggering. Another quiet announcement of your husband's wealth. You cannot afford to be a minimalist. This elaborate costume has a profound effect on your physicality. You cannot bend easily at the waist. You walk with a slow, gliding motion, your legs hidden beneath the swaying cage. You take up an enormous amount of physical space. But there is a strange and specific danger associated with your fashionable silhouette fire. Those wide, airy skirts, made of flammable fabrics like cotton and muslin, are incredibly susceptible to catching a spark from an open fireplace. Newspapers of the era are filled with horrifying accounts of women going up in flames in an instant. The very symbol of your fashionable femininity is also a significant fire hazard. What is the meaning of this restrictive and even dangerous fashion? Historians have long debated its purpose. One school of thought sees it as a clear form of social control. The corset and crinoline physically disable you. They make it impossible to run, to perform manual labor, or to engage in any kind of vigorous activity. Your clothing is a constant physical reminder of your role as a delicate, ornamental creature. It enforces passivity. From this perspective, fashion is a tool of patriarchy, a way of turning women into beautiful, immobile objects. However, other historians argue for a more complex interpretation. They suggest that women were not just passive victims of fashion, but active participants in its creation and meaning. The grand, space-consuming silhouette of the crinoline, they argue, could be seen as a form of power. A woman in a full crinoline cannot be ignored. She dominates a room. When you enter, people must make way. It is a bold, unapologetic claiming of physical territory. In this light, the crinoline is not just a cage, but a statement of presence and importance. Some have even suggested that the cage crinoline, by creating a distinct barrier around the lower half of the body, offered a strange sort of privacy and protection in an increasingly crowded world. The debate continues, a fascinating discussion about whether these clothes were a prison or a platform. For you, standing in your parlor, it is simply the reality of your existence. The collarbone digs into your ribs. The weight of the skirt is a familiar drag. You are a walking sculpture, a carefully constructed ideal of middle-class femininity. The men are beginning to stir in the dining room. Soon they will rejoin you, and you must once again become the perfect hostess, your beautiful, restrictive clothing the uniform for the final act of the evening. The last of the dinner guests is finally departed, the front door closing on the cool night air. A profound, exhausted silence descends upon the house. The performance is over, but your work, and the work of your staff is not. The glittering aftermath of the party, the wine-stained napkins, the chrome-covered plates, the forest of used glasses, must all be dealt with. While you may not be scrubbing the pots yourself, the responsibility for the great, unending war against dirt and disorder rests squarely on your shoulders. And in the Victorian middle-class mind, cleanliness is not just about hygiene, it is a moral imperative. Dirt is not just untidy, it is evidence of a moral failing. You wake the next morning to a house already humming with the activity of cleaning. This is a daily battle. Dust, the great enemy, is a constant invader, filtering in from the smoggy, coal-choked city streets. It settles on every one of your countless surfaces of fine gray powder that dulls the gleam of your polished mahogany and clings to the velvet of your curtains. The housemaid's first task of the day, after lighting the fires, is to begin this fight. She opens the windows to air the rooms. Then, armed with a feather duster and a collection of soft rags, she begins her methodical assault. The sheer labor involved is immense. The carpets, heavy with intricate patterns, are not vacuumed. They are taken outside and beaten with a rattan rug beater, a physically punishing task that raises great clouds of dust. The wooden floors are swept, then polished on hands and knees with beeswax and turpentine, a smell that forever permeates the house. Every piece of silver must be hand-polished with a special paste to ward off tarnish. Every glass chimney on every oil lamp and gazelle must be removed and wiped clean of soot. It is a relentless, Sisyphean task. The dust settles almost as soon as it is wiped away. And you, as the mistress, are the general in this war. You might not be on the front lines, but you are poring over the maps back at headquarters. You consult your household manuals, which are filled with recipes for cleaning solutions and elaborate, seasonal battle plans. Spring, for instance, is the time for the great annual offensive known as spring cleaning. This is not a casual weekend task, it is a full-scale, top-to-bottom household upheaval that can last for weeks. Carpets are taken up, furniture is moved out of rooms, curtains are taken down, and every single inch of the house is scrubbed, washed, and polished. This obsession with cleanliness has given rise to a host of new, sometimes peculiar, tools and products. The carpet sweeper, a mechanical box on wheels with rotating brushes, is a recent and exciting invention, a precursor to the vacuum cleaner. There are specialized brushes for every conceivable task. A brush for the fireplace, a brush for the skirting boards, a tiny brush for the intricate carvings on the furniture. And there are branded cleaning products making their first appearance, like Pear's soap, which advertises itself not just as a way to get clean, but as a path to moral and social improvement. An early ad shows a dirty boy being scrubbed clean, with the tagline connecting soap to the civilizing mission of the empire. Why this sudden, almost fanatical obsession with sanitation and hygiene? Historians point to several converging factors. Firstly, there's the growing scientific understanding of disease. The miasma theory, the idea that disease is spread by bad smells and noxious vapors, is still prevalent. A clean-smelling house is therefore seen as a healthy house. By banishing dirt and odors, you are literally fighting off cholera and typhoid. You are protecting your family. The later development of germ theory will only intensify this conviction. But the obsession goes deeper than just a fear of germs. Historians of the era argue that the war against dust was also a symbolic one. In a society grappling with the dirt, chaos, and social upheaval of industrialization, the home became a fortress of order and purity. The city outside was dirty, crowded, and morally ambiguous. Your home was to be its opposite, clean, orderly, and morally pure. Every speck of dust you banished was a tiny victory against the encroaching chaos of the modern world. It was a way of imposing control on your immediate environment when the world outside felt increasingly out of control. There is a continuing debate about what this meant for women. Was this cult of domesticity and its focus on cleanliness a burden or a source of pride? On one hand, it created an enormous, never-ending workload and a new source of anxiety. Your worth as a woman was judged by the spotlessness of your home. A dusty parlor was a reflection of your lazy, slovenly character. But on the other hand, it gave women a clear and important mission. They were the guardians of the family's health and the nation's moral fiber. A clean home was a patriotic duty. By creating this island of sanitary purity, you were not just dusting furniture. You were building a better society, one polished table at a time. As you walk through your now restored parlor, the sunlight glinting off a dust-free surface, you feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. The enemy has been repelled. The fortress is secure, at least for today. The house is clean, the social obligations are met, but your most important production is yet to come, the next generation. The nursery on the upper floor of the house is a world unto itself, and you are expected to be its guiding influence, if not its hands-on manager. Your children are not just your offspring. They are a reflection of your family's moral and social standing. Raising them correctly is perhaps your most solemn duty as the angel in the house. And thankfully, you are not alone. The market is flooded with child-rearing manuals, written by doctors, clergymen, and experienced mothers, all promising to give you the blueprint for a perfect child. When the baby arrives, the advice begins immediately, and much of it is centered on a rigid, almost scientific schedule. The popular wisdom of the day is that babies must be trained into a strict routine from their first moments. You are advised to feed them by the clock, not on demand. Crying, you are told, is not a sign of hunger or distress, but a battle of wills. The manuals warn you against picking up a crying baby. To do so would be to spoil them, to teach them that they can manipulate you with tears. You must be firm. You must show them from infancy who is in charge. This is the first and most crucial lesson in obedience. Your direct, physical contact with your infant might be surprisingly limited. The day-to-day care, the changing, the bathing, the feeding is largely the responsibility of the wet nurse or the nanny. In fact, one of the most curious and debated practices of the era is swaddling. This is the ancient practice of wrapping an infant tightly in strips of cloth, their arms and legs held straight and immobile. The manuals that promote it argue that it keeps the baby warm, protects them from scratching themselves, and, most importantly, helps their limbs grow straight. It is thought that a baby left to its own devices will thrash about and might even grow up crooked. Swaddling imposes order on the chaotic, flailing body of the infant. It is a physical manifestation of the Victorian desire for control and discipline. As your children grow, the focus shifts from physical control to moral molding. The nursery is seen as a laboratory for character. Every story you read to them, every game they play, is an opportunity for a lesson. Fairy tales are popular, but often the versions you read have been rewritten to emphasize virtues like obedience, honesty, and piety. Disobedience is met with swift and firm punishment. The concept of sparing the rod and spoiling the child is taken very seriously. While you might not be the one to administer it, physical punishment is a standard and accepted part of child rearing. The intellectual development of your sons and daughters will follow starkly different paths. Your son will be educated for the public sphere. He will learn Latin, Greek, mathematics, and history, the tools he will need to succeed in business or a profession. Your daughter's education, on the other hand, will be designed to make her a perfect angel in the house, just like you. She will learn accomplishments, a little French, how to play the piano, how to draw, how to manage a household. Her mind is to be cultivated like a decorative garden, not sharpened like a tool for public use. To educate her too much would be to make her unmarriageable. Historians have long debated the emotional impact of this style of parenting. Was it a recipe for producing emotionally stunted, repressed adults? The emphasis on discipline over affection, on schedule over spontaneity, and the physical distance often maintained between parents and children seems, to a modern eye, cold and unloving. The Freudian psychologists of a later generation would have a field day with the Victorian family, seeing it as a source of deep-seated neuroses. From this perspective, the stern, patriarchal father and the distant, idealized mother created a generation of emotionally crippled children. However, other historians caution against judging the past by the standards of the present. They argue that this approach to child rearing was born not of coldness, but of a deep and genuine anxiety for the child's well-being, both in this life and the next. In a world with high infant mortality rates and a firm belief in original sin, discipline and moral training were seen as acts of profound love. You were training your child to survive in a harsh world and to save their immortal soul. The emphasis on routine was about creating a stable, predictable world for a child. The children's hour, that once scheduled hour of parental contact, was seen not as a restriction, but as a special, treasured time set aside exclusively for them. This scholarly debate continues, questioning whether the Victorian nursery was a place of loving guidance or a factory for psychological damage. For you, sitting in the parlor during the designated children's hour, you watch your two young children playing quietly on the rug. They are clean. They are polite. They do not shout. They are perfect little miniatures of the adults they are supposed to become. You look at their scrubbed faces and feel a swell of love mingled with a heavy sense of responsibility. You are molding them, shaping them, turning them into respectable members of society. And you pray that you are getting it right. The household is running smoothly. The children are being molded. But the machinery of your domestic life requires constant fuel things. You need food for the larder, cloth for new dresses, furniture for the parlor, and toys for the nursery. And so, on a designated afternoon, you find yourself preparing to go shopping. This is not the quick, utilitarian errand it might become in the future. For a woman of your class, shopping is a carefully managed excursion, a semi-public performance with its own set of rules and a brand new, spectacular stage, the department store. Until recently, shopping was a very different experience. You would have gone to a series of small, specialized, and often dark and crowded shops. A draper for fabric, a grocer for tea and sugar, a butcher for meat. These were primarily male spaces, places of commerce where you would state your business, make your purchase, and leave. There was no browsing, no lingering. It was not considered entirely respectable for a lady to spend too much time in such places. But now, in the heart of the city, a new kind of institution has risen up, a palace of consumption. From the moment you step out of your carriage, the department store is designed to awe and entice you. It has vast plate glass windows, a technological marvel in themselves, displaying fantastical scenes of dressed mannequins and pyramids of goods. The entrance is grand with liveried doormen who tip their hats as you enter. Inside, it's a different world. It's light, it's airy, it's vast. Instead of small, dark counters, you find wide, sweeping aisles and soaring atriums that flood the space with natural light. This is a space designed for women. It is a safe, respectable, and exciting public space where you can linger for hours without your reputation being questioned. You are not just a customer. You are a guest. You can wander freely from the glove department to the millinery department, from furniture to fabrics. This is the birth of browsing. You are encouraged to look, to touch, to imagine these goods in your own home. The prices are clearly marked on little tags, a revolutionary concept known as fixed pricing. This eliminates the need for unseemly haggling, a process considered far too coarse for a lady. The department store offers more than just goods, it offers amenities. There are tea rooms where you can rest your feet and meet with friends. There are reading rooms and even, a shocking luxury, ladies' lavatories, clean and well appointed. It is a self-contained world, a public extension of the domestic sphere. It is an urban paradise where a middle-class woman can exercise her new role as the family's chief consumer in comfort and style. And there is so much to consume. The Industrial Revolution, which your husband is a part of, has resulted in a flood of mass-produced goods. Things that were once handmade and expensive are now affordable to a much wider swath of society. You can buy ready-made curtains, machine-printed wallpaper, and sets of matching ceramic dinnerware. This is the dawn of consumer culture, and you are its primary target. Your role is to translate your husband's income into a visible, material lifestyle. The choices you make here, the pattern of your china, the fabric for your new dress, are all reflections on your taste and your family's social standing. This new world of shopping raises questions that historians still explore. Did the department store represent a form of liberation for women? For the first time, it gave them a legitimate reason to be out in the city, unchaperoned. It provided a public space where they could socialize, exercise their judgment, and control a significant portion of the family budget. It was a sphere of influence that was undeniably female. Some historians argue that the woman shopper was a new, powerful identity, a figure who, through her collective choices, could shape the direction of modern manufacturing and design. On the other hand, was this just a new, more beautifully decorated cage? Critics, both at the time and today, argue that it simply channeled women's energies into the frivolous pursuit of consumption. It defined female identity through the acquisition of things. It encouraged a new form of competitiveness, not just in the running of your home, but in the possession of the latest fashions and furnishings. It turned you into the engine of a capitalist machine, convincing you that happiness and fulfillment could be found in the next purchase. The debate considers whether you are an empowered agent in this new world, or simply a more active, more willing participant in your own gilded confinement. You pause before a display of the latest kitchen gadgets. A mechanical apple peeler, a new kind of egg beater, a complex-looking cherry-picking device. These are marketed as labor-saving devices promising to make your household run more efficiently. They are symbols of progress, the march of science entering your kitchen. You contemplate buying the apple peeler. It seems wonderfully modern. It would be a conversation piece. You make the purchase. The item is wrapped in brown paper and string, and you continue your slow, deliberate journey through this cathedral of commerce, a dutiful angel, performing your sacred duty of shopping. You return from your shopping trip, the new apple peeler a small trophy of modern life. But no amount of new technology can protect your home from one of the most persistent anxieties of your era, sickness. In a world before widespread vaccination and antibiotics, a simple cough, a fever, or a child's rash can quickly escalate into a life or death crisis. When illness strikes, the moral fortress of your home becomes a makeshift hospital, and you, the angel in the house, are expected to be its head nurse. Your husband might call for a doctor, a stern man who will arrive with his black leather bag and an air of authority. But his treatments are often limited, and sometimes more dangerous than the disease itself. He might practice heroic medicine, resorting to bleeding the patient with leeches to balance their humors, or administering strong purgatives like mercury or arsenic-based compounds. The doctor's visit is often a last resort. The day-to-day management of illness falls to you. Your first line of defense is the household medical manual. Alongside Mrs. D. tons on your shelf, you likely have a copy of something like Dr. Chase's Recipes, a popular home guide to medicine. These books are a fascinating and sometimes terrifying mix of folk wisdom, herbal remedies, and outright quackery. For a common cold, you might be advised to make a mustard plaster to place on the chest, a poultice that could easily blister the skin. For a fever, you might brew a tea from willow bark, a natural source of salicylic acid, the basis for aspirin, and one of the few genuinely effective remedies available. But for every piece of sound advice, there is a sea of misinformation. The market is flooded with patent medicines, bottles of potions with impressive names and even more impressive claims. These are the miracle cures of the age, advertised in every newspaper. They promise to cure everything from consumption and cancer to female complaints and nervous exhaustion. You might have a bottle of Lydia E. Pinkham's vegetable compound in your medicine cabinet, a hugely popular remedy for menstrual cramps and other gynecological issues. What the label doesn't tell you is that a significant percentage of its formula is alcohol. For a society that frowned upon women drinking, these medicinal compounds offered a respectable way to get a regular dose of liquor. Another incredibly popular product you might rely on is Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup. Marketed for teething infants and fussy children, it was a godsend for exhausted mothers and nurses. It worked like a charm. A few drops and the crying would cease, the child drifting into a placid sleep. The secret ingredient: morphine. You are, in essence, quieting your child with a powerful opiate. The widespread use of these opium and alcohol-based medicines is one of the great, dark secrets of the Victorian home. Why were these questionable, and often dangerous, remedies so popular? Historians see it as a reflection of the era's anxieties and the limitations of professional medicine. Doctors were expensive, and their treatments were often harsh and ineffective. Patent medicines offered a sense of empowerment. You could take your family's health into your own hands. The act of mixing a poultice or administering a spoonful of syrup was a way of doing something in the face of a terrifying, invisible threat. The debate among medical historians continues over the legacy of this domestic health care. Was it a necessary stopgap, a way for women to provide comfort and care using the best knowledge they had available. Many of the practices, like ensuring bed rest, providing nourishing broths, and keeping the patient clean and warm, were genuinely beneficial. In this light, the female home nurse was a vital health care provider, combining practical care with immense psychological comfort. Or was the reliance on quack remedies and dangerous patent medicines a public health disaster, perpetuated by ignorance and savvy marketing? The widespread, unintentional addiction to opiates and alcohol, particularly among women seeking relief from the constraints of their lives, suggests a darker side to this domestic pharmacy. You sit by your child's bedside. He has a fever, his forehead hot beneath your cool hand. You sent the maid to the chemist for a bottle of a popular fever reducer. You feel a familiar, not a fear in your stomach. You are the guardian of this small life. You will sit here all night, bathing his forehead, whispering soothing words, and administering the medicine you pray will work. You are the angel, and at no time does that title feel heavier or more fragile than when you are standing watch in the sick room, fighting a battle you cannot see. The sick child is recovered, and a fragile peace is settled back over the household. The clock ticks on, and with it come the quiet, unfilled hours of the afternoon. Your husband is at work. The children are in the nursery. The housework is, for the moment, under control. These empty hours can be a source of profound boredom and loneliness, a condition often diagnosed by doctors as nerves or melancholia. To fill this void, and to prevent the idleness that is seen as the devil's workshop, you are encouraged to cultivate a set of accomplishments or genteel hobbies. These are not just casual pastimes. They are activities deemed suitable for a lady of your station. They must be clean, quiet, and performed within the home. They should display your taste and refinement, but must never rise to the level of a profession or a consuming passion. Your hobby is to be a decorative flourish on your life, not its central purpose. Perhaps the most common and approved of these activities is needlework. You sit in your parlor, your posture perfect, and work on a piece of embroidery or Berlin wool work. Berlin work is a form of needlepoint using brightly colored wools on canvas, a sort of Victorian paint by numbers. You follow a printed pattern to create a floral design for a pillowcase, a sentimental scene for a fire screen, or perhaps a pair of embroidered slippers for your husband. It is detailed, painstaking work. It keeps your hands busy and produces a tangible, decorative result. It is the perfect feminine pastime, quiet, domestic, and useful in a purely ornamental way. If you have a more artistic bent, you might turn to watercolor painting or sketching. You would not paint grand historical scenes or dramatic landscapes. Your subjects are those deemed appropriate for a lady: a vase of flowers from your own garden, a picturesque but not too rugged country scene, a portrait of your sleeping child. Your sketchbook is a private record of the beautiful, contained world around you. This art is for personal enjoyment and for sharing with your immediate circle, perhaps bound in a small album. To sell it, or to seek public exhibition, would be to cross the line from a genteel accomplishment into the vulgar, masculine world of commerce. Music is another essential accomplishment. Your parlor most likely contains a piano, which stands as a key symbol of middle-class status. You were taught to play as a girl, and you are expected to maintain your skills. After dinner, you might be called upon to play for your family or guests. You would not play stormy, passionate sonatas. You would play gentle ballads, light classical pieces, or popular songs of the day. Your music is to be a pleasing background accompaniment to domestic life, a soothing balm after a hard day's work for your husband. Like your conversation, your music should be pleasant, but not too challenging. One of the more peculiar and fascinating hobbies of the era is the art of creating sentimental albums or scrapbooks. But these are not just collections of photographs. You might press flowers, gathering ferns and blossoms and arranging them into delicate patterns. You might practice the art of seaweed scrapbooking, collecting delicate fronds of algae from a seaside holiday, pressing them, and arranging them on the page like miniature underwater forests. Another popular, though perhaps macabre, hobby is hair work. You would take locks of hair from loved ones, your children, your husband, a dear friend who has passed away, and weave them into intricate designs, often under glass to be mounted as a brooch, a watch fob, or a framed picture. It's a way of keeping a physical piece of your loved ones close, a deeply personal and tangible expression of sentiment. Widely specific, often intensely detailed and domestic hobbies. Historians see the rise of the female accomplishment as part of the broader project of defining the middle-class woman's role. These activities kept you occupied and out of trouble. They reinforced the values of domesticity, patience, and beauty. They allowed you to contribute to the beautification of your home, your primary sphere, without engaging in real work. It was a form of productive idleness. The debate among historians often centers on whether these accomplishments were a source of genuine fulfillment or a subtle form of busy work designed to stifle intellectual growth. Were these creative outlets a way for women to express themselves and find joy and satisfaction in a constrained world? A beautifully executed piece of embroidery or a well-played sonata could be a source of immense personal pride. From this perspective, these hobbies were a vital part of a woman's emotional and creative life. On the other hand, critics argue that these accomplishments were a distraction, channeling women's intelligence and energy into trivial, ornamental pursuits. Instead of writing a novel, you're embroidering a pillowcase. Instead of studying botany, you're pressing flowers into a scrapbook. You look down at the half-finished floral pattern on the canvas in your lap. The colors are bright, the stitches are neat. It is pretty. It is placid. It passes the time. The clock ticks, marking another quiet, orderly, and accomplished afternoon in the life of the angel in the house. The afternoon light is fading, and the quiet hour for accomplishments is drawing to a close. You put away your needlework and drift towards the bookshelf. Reading is another of your approved pastimes, but what you read is just as carefully curated as any other aspect of your life. The parlor bookshelf is a public statement, its contents chosen to reflect the moral and intellectual character of your family. The books here are likely to be handsome, leather-bound volumes, the complete works of Shakespeare, the poetry of Tennyson and, of course, Coventry Patmore, a collection of sermons, and perhaps a history of England. These are books that signal seriousness and piety. Their spines are often pristine, their pages largely unread. Your personal reading, however, is a more complicated matter. There is a vast and growing body of literature considered suitable for you. This includes the aforementioned poetry, which is seen as elevating and emotionally refining. It also includes a huge number of novels written specifically by and for women. These domestic novels, often penned by authors like Charlotte Yonge or Mrs. Oliphant, focus on the trials and tribulations of family life, courtship, and moral duty. They reinforce the values you are expected to embody: self-sacrifice, piety, and devotion to your family. They are, in essence, extended instruction manuals for being a good woman, wrapped in a sentimental plot. You might also be encouraged to read non-fiction that is improving but not overly taxing. Books on botany from a flower-arranging perspective, travelogues of a gentle, picturesque nature, or biographies of exemplary historical women, usually queens or saints, are all considered safe and beneficial. They are meant to broaden your horizons just enough to make you an interesting companion, without filling your head with dangerous or unfeminine ideas. But then there is the other kind of reading, the kind you might do in private with a sense of thrilling guilt. This is the era of the sensation novel, a new and wildly popular genre that your husband and every moral authority has warned you against. Authors like Wilkie Collins and Mary Elizabeth Braddon are writing shocking, scandalous page-turners. These are not quiet stories of domestic virtue. They are tales of bigamy, adultery, murder, blackmail, and hidden inheritances. They feature heroines who are not angelic and self-sacrificing, but clever, deceptive, and driven by their own desires. They are, in a word, exciting. To be caught reading a sensation novel would be deeply embarrassing. They are considered vulgar, overly stimulating, and morally corrupting. Critics of the day claim they will give you brain fever, overexcite your delicate nervous system, and plant wicked ideas in your head, and so they become a kind of forbidden fruit. This is where the circulating library comes in. For a small subscription fee, you can borrow the latest novels without having to purchase them. The books often come in plain brown paper wrappers, allowing you to smuggle them into the house discreetly. You might hide your copy of Lady Audley's Secret under a cushion or in your sewing basket, reading it in snatched moments when you are alone. This is also the age of the serialized novel. Charles Dickens, George Eliot, and the Bronte sisters publish their work in monthly installments in popular magazines. This creates a nationwide, shared reading experience. Families will gather in the evening to read the latest chapter aloud. For weeks, the entire country might be wondering if Little Nell will survive, or what will become of Jane Eyre. It is the television event of its day, a source of communal speculation and emotional investment. The role of literature in your life is a subject of ongoing historical debate. Was the domestic novel a tool for reinforcing the patriarchal status quo, constantly feeding you stories that glorified your own confinement? Many critics argue that it was, seeing this genre as a form of powerful propaganda for the angel in the house ideal. By presenting self-sacrifice as the ultimate female virtue, these books help to ensure that women accepted their limited role without question. Conversely, other literary historians argue that even within these constraints, novels provided women with a rich and complex inner life. Reading was a profound form of escape. Through the pages of a book you could travel, fall in love, solve a mystery, or experience a life of adventure and passion, all from the safety of your parlor. Furthermore, they argue that many novels, even the seemingly conventional ones, contain subtle critiques of the very world they depicted. Jane Austen from a slightly earlier period, but still wildly popular, the Bronte sisters, and George Eliot all created heroines with fierce intelligence, deep passions, and a yearning for a life beyond the domestic sphere. Reading their stories could be a deeply validating and even radicalizing experience. It could make you feel less alone in your own quiet frustrations. You settle into a comfortable chair, hidden from the doorway. You open the book you borrowed from the library. It is not a volume of sermons. It is the latest installment of a thrilling story about a woman with a dangerous secret. For the next hour, you are not the angel in the house. You are an adventurer, a detective, a soul in turmoil. You are free. The house is silent, and you turn the page. As you sit absorbed in your forbidden novel, the quiet life of the house continues around you. But your world, the upstairs world of parlors and propriety, is only one half of the story. Beneath your feet, and in the hidden corridors at the back of the house, exists a parallel universe, a separate and unequal kingdom that makes your own life possible. This is the downstairs world of your servants. Your house is designed to keep these two worlds as separate as possible. There is a front stair for the family, carpeted and polished, and a back stair for the servants, which is narrow, steep, and unadorned. This architectural segregation ensures that you rarely have to encounter your staff outside of the formal moments when they are performing a specific task for you. They are meant to be invisible, moving through the house like ghosts, their work getting done as if by magic. Their living quarters are in the least desirable parts of the house. The housemaids might share a small, cold room in the attic, with a sloping roof and a tiny window. The cook and other senior staff might have slightly better rooms in the basement, close to the heat of the kitchen but also damp and dark, with windows that look out onto a brick wall or the feet of passers-by. These rooms are sparsely furnished with a simple iron vesta, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and perhaps a wooden chest for their few belongings. There is no privacy, no comfort, and no beauty. It is a world away from the plush, cluttered comfort of your own bedroom. Their day is a mirror image of your own leisurely, clock-governed schedule, but stripped of all its grace and filled with grueling labor. The young housemaid, the lowest in the hierarchy, is up before 5. Her first task is to crawl on her hands and knees in the dark and cold to rake out the ashes from yesterday's fires and light new ones in every grate in the house. Then she begins the endless task of carrying heavy cans of hot water up the back stairs for the family's morning ablutions. Her day is a blur of scrubbing, polishing, carrying, and cleaning, and it won't end until late at night, long after you have retired to bed. She might get one half day off a week if you are a generous employer. The kitchen is the bustling, often chaotic, heart of this downstairs world. It is the domain of the cook, who rules it with an iron fist. It is hot, noisy, and filled with the smells of cooking, cleaning, and humanity. It's a place of strict hierarchy and its own social codes. The servants eat their meals here at a large, scrubbed wooden table. The senior staff, the cook, the butler if you had one, would be served first, their food of a slightly better quality than that given to the junior maids. The conversation here is not the polite, stilted chat of your dinner table. It is a place of gossip, complaints, and camaraderie, a closed world with its own secrets and loyalties. One of the most revealing details about this separation is the way you communicate. You summon them with the pull-the-bell rope. This system of bells, which terminates in the kitchen or servant's hall, is the primary link between your two worlds. Each bell is labeled parlor, master bedroom, boudoir. When a bell jangles, a maid must drop everything and run to answer the call. It is a system that reinforces the power dynamic at every moment. You do not need to raise your voice or seek them out. You simply pull a cord and they must appear. Historians continue to debate the lived experience of the domestic servant. Was it a life of unmitigated drudgery and depression? The long hours, low pay, lack of freedom, and the constant threat of dismissal certainly point in that direction. Servants' memoirs are full of stories of tyrannical employers, loneliness, and the sheer physical exhaustion of the work. The system was designed to strip them of their individuality and turn them into efficient, anonymous machines for domestic labor. However, other historians argue that this picture is too one-sided. The downstairs world, while hard, was also a community. For a young girl leaving her village for the first time, the company of other servants could be a vital source of friendship and support. They created their own culture with its own jokes, slang, and social rules, a world hidden from the eyes of their employers. Furthermore, as we've touched on, for many, service was seen as a genuine opportunity. It offered a degree of security and the chance to learn skills. A successful cook or a lady's maid held a position of considerable prestige and could earn a respectable wage. The debate hinges on whether the security and community offered by service could ever compensate for the fundamental lack of freedom and the inherent inequality of the system. You close your novel, the fictional drama fading away. You ring the bell for the parlor maid to come and light the gas lamps. A moment later, she appears, silent and deficient. She moves through the room, a familiar yet unknown presence. You know her name, you know her duties, but you know nothing of her life, her hopes, her fears. She is the ghost in your machine, the silent, essential inhabitant of the other half of your home. She finishes her task, gives a slight curtsy, and disappears back through the door, back to her own world, leaving you alone in the soft, flickering light. The gas lamps cast a warm, steady glow over the parlor, pushing back the encroaching shadows of the evening. The house is settled into its nightly rhythm, a quiet hum of domestic order. This order is maintained not just by the formal rules of etiquette, the calling cards, the dinner party seating plans, but by a vast, unspoken code of conduct. This is the art of silence, the mastery of what is not said, what is not done, and what is not acknowledged. This is the concept of propriety, and it is the invisible glue that holds your entire world together. Propriety dictates that you maintain a constant, placid emotional demeanor. To show strong emotion, whether it is passionate joy, deep sorrow, or, worst of all, anger, is considered a sign of poor breeding. It is vulgar, it is unsettling. As the angel in the house, you are expected to be a sea of tranquility. When your husband comes home frustrated from work, you meet his anger with serene calm. When your child throws a tantrum, you respond with firm, emotionals as discipline. Your own feelings, your frustrations, your anxieties must be suppressed, hidden behind a mask of gentle composure. This emotional regulation is one of your most important and exhausting jobs. This silence extends to the physical body. The Victorian middle class has a profound and anxious relationship with the human body. It is seen as a source of potential shame and embarrassment. You do not speak of it. A woman who is pregnant is not pregnant. She is in a delicate condition, in the family way, or simply expecting. The word leg is considered so scandalous that, as you've seen, people will cover the limbs of their pianos and tables. Even in a medical context, a lady would not speak directly of her body to a male doctor, often pointing to a doll to indicate the location of her ailment. This intense bodily modesty is a cornerstone of female propriety. Nowhere is this code of silence more powerful than in the realm of anything connected to sex and desire. This is, famously, an era of deep public repression. Sex is an unmentionable topic, a necessary evil for the purpose of procreation within marriage, but certainly not a source of pleasure, especially for a woman. For you, the angel in the house, to have any sexual feelings or knowledge is to be fallen, to be tainted. Your innocence and your ignorance are considered two of your most precious virtues. This is, of course, a public fiction. The Victorian era was also a time of thriving prostitution and widespread circulation of pornographic material. The public silence created a vast and shadowy underworld. But in your world, the parlor, that underworld does not exist. It is never, ever acknowledged. This leads to one of the most famously misunderstood facts about your era, the idea that women ought to lie back and think of England on their wedding night. While that specific phrase is likely apocryphal and appeared later, it captures a genuine truth about the advice given to young middle-class women. They were kept in a state of profound ignorance about the physical realities of marriage. Their mothers would not speak of it. Their education ignored it. They were expected to enter into their marital duties with a combination of innocence and silent submission. The goal was to endure, not to enjoy. Why this intense culture of suppression and silence? Historians have offered many explanations. For the rising middle classes, propriety was a way to distinguish themselves from what they saw as the animalistic, unrestrained passions of the working class below them and the decadent, immoral aristocracy above them. Self-control, emotional regulation, and sexual repression became badges of class identity. To be respectable was to be in control of one's baser instincts. But was this system of repression psychologically sustainable? This is a major point of debate among historians. One view, heavily influenced by Freudian theory, argues that this repression led to a pandemic of hysteria and other nervous disorders, particularly among women. With no legitimate outlet for their emotional and sexual lives, their frustrations manifested as physical symptoms, fainting spells, paralysis, anxiety attacks. Hysteria, a catch-all diagnosis for almost any form of female distress, became the characteristic malady of the age. From this perspective, the quiet, orderly Victorian home was a pressure cooker of suppressed desires and anxieties. However, a revisionist school of historians challenges this view. They argue that we have exaggerated the Victorians' prudishness, mistaking their public formality for their private reality. By reading personal diaries and private letters, they uncover a world where husbands and wives expressed deep affection and passion for each other. They argue that the idea of the passionless woman was a prescriptive ideal, not always a lived reality. They suggest that to label every distressed woman as a hysteric is to ignore the very real social and economic reasons for her unhappiness. Her nervous condition might not be a symptom of sexual repression, but a perfectly rational response to a life of boredom, intellectual starvation, and powerlessness. As you sit in the quiet glow of the gaslight, you feel the weight of these unspoken rules. The need to smile when you are sad, to be silent when you are angry, to be still when you want to run. Propriety is the air you breathe, so pervasive you barely notice it, yet it shapes every move you make. It is the price of your security. It is the cost of being an angel. The evening is late now. Your husband is likely in his study, and the children are long asleep. The silence of the house deepens, and in this quiet, the mask of serene propriety you've worn all day begins to feel heavy. This is the time when the unaccumulated costs of your perfect life can surface. This is the time for the angel's private sorrow, a gentle, pervasive melancholy that was the unspoken affliction of so many women in your position. The doctors have a name for it, a whole vocabulary of vague and poetic ailments. They call it neurasthenia, a weakness of the nerves. They call it the vapors melancholia, or simply female hysteria. If you were to consult a physician about your feelings of listlessness, your frequent headaches, your unexplained crying spells, or the sense of suffocating boredom, he would likely diagnose you with one of these fashionable, exclusively female conditions. It is the malady of the refined woman, a sign that your delicate sensibilities are simply too fine for the coarse realities of the world. His prescribed treatment would be as gentle and passive as the ailment itself. He would not suggest you find a stimulating new hobby or, heaven forbid, a job. He would prescribe the rest cure. This was a very real and popular medical treatment, pioneered by a physician named S. Where Mitchell, you would be confined to your bed for weeks, sometimes months. You would be forbidden to read, to write, to sew, or even to feed yourself. You would be kept in a state of enforced, total passivity. Your mind and body meant to recharge. You would become, quite literally, the ultimate domestic ornament, a beautiful, silent, motionless object in the bedroom. The house itself, your supposed sanctuary, can begin to feel like a prison. The endless, repetitive cycle of your days, planning meals, managing servants, receiving calls, overseeing cleaning, can stretch before you like a vast gray expanse. Every object in your overstuffed parlor, once a source of pride, can start to seem like another bar in your cage. The ticking clock, once the instrument of your managerial power, now sounds like a countdown to nothing in particular. This profound existential boredom is a luxury problem, of course. The housemaid, scrubbing floors on her hands and knees, does not have the leisure to be bored. But for you, with a mind that may be sharpened, a spirit that may be restless, the lack of meaningful stimulus can be a kind of slow, quiet starvation. You might find yourself gazing out the parlor window, looking at the street, a world you can see but not truly join. You watch men striding purposefully to their offices. You see carts and carriages moving with a sense of urgent business. It is the world of action, of purpose, of consequence, and you are sealed off from it, a spectator behind glass. This feeling of being removed from the real world is a common theme in the private diaries of women from your era. They write of feeling like ghosts in their own lives, performing a role that feels hollow and disconnected from their true selves. So was the angel in the house ideal a blueprint for happiness or a recipe for depression? This is a question at the heart of much historical and literary scholarship on the period. The traditional view is that this restrictive ideal was profoundly damaging to women's mental health. By denying them intellectual stimulation, professional ambition, and emotional expression, Victorian society created a generation of depressed, anxious, and hysterical women. The rescuer is seen not as a cure, but as the ultimate expression of the problem, a silencing and infantilization of female suffering. However, some revisionist historians offer a more nuanced perspective. They argue that we must be careful not to impose our modern psychological frameworks onto the past. Perhaps what we diagnose as depression was understood differently then, as a spiritual crisis, a test of faith, or a sign of superior moral sensitivity. They also point out that many women found genuine fulfillment in the domestic sphere. For a woman who truly embraced the role, managing a home, raising children, and cultivating a beautiful and orderly environment could be a source of immense pride, creativity, and satisfaction. She might not see her life as a cage, but as a kingdom, and herself as its beloved and powerful queen. The angel ideal, for some, may not have been a burden, but a source of profound meaning and identity. The debate continues, a quiet academic conversation about the inner lives of women long gone. Was the angel's melancholy a pathological response to an oppressive system, or was it a culturally sanctioned way of expressing a wide range of human sorrows? As you sit alone in your parlor, you are not thinking in these historical terms. You simply feel a quiet ache, a sense of something missing. You are safe, you are comfortable, you are respected. You have everything a woman is supposed to want. And yet, you are not entirely happy. It is a silent, secret sorrow, the quiet, personal cost of being the perfect angel in the house. Most of your life is spent within the carefully controlled environment of your home, or the equally controlled parlors of your friends. But on rare occasions, you must venture out. You must navigate the public sphere, that chaotic, masculine world from which your home is meant to be a refuge. These excursions to church, to a concert, perhaps on a railway journey to visit family, are fraught with their own set of rules and anxieties. To be a respectable lady in public requires a whole new layer of performance. Your primary rule is to make yourself as inconspicuous as possible. You are not there to draw attention. Your clothing, while fashionable, should be modest and sober in color. Grays, browns, and dark blues are preferred for day wear. You wear a bonnet or hat that partially shields your face. And of course, your gloves are always on. Your demeanor is quiet and reserved. You keep your eyes downcast, avoiding direct eye contact with strangers, especially men. To meet a man's gaze would be seen as a bold, and potentially promiscuous invitation. When you walk, you do not stride purposefully, you glide. You must also be ever mindful of your crinoline hoop skirt. Navigating a crowded pavement or public omnibus requires a specific technique of gathering your hoops to avoid bumping into people or revealing your ankles. The simple act of walking down the street is a learned skill, a constant management of your clothing and your personal space. If you are traveling any significant distance, you will likely be accompanied by a male escort, your husband, your brother, or a trusted family friend. A lady does not travel alone. But what if you must? What if you are a widow, or your husband is unavailable? This is where a very peculiar Victorian institution comes into play: the unaccompanied ladies' compartment on trains. Railway companies, recognizing both the new mobility of women and the perceived dangers of public travel, created separate carriages exclusively for women traveling alone. These were seen as safe, protected spaces, a little mobile parlor where you could be shielded from any unwelcome contact with strange men. To travel in the general carriage would be to risk your reputation and expose yourself to potential harassment. The city street itself is a morally ambiguous space. It is the domain of commerce labor, and in the shadows, vice. As a respectable woman, you do not linger. You do not window shop aimlessly. You proceed directly to your destination. There are entire areas of the city that are effectively off limits to you, especially after dark. The idea of you going to a pub or a music hall, places of rowdy, mixed-class entertainment, is unthinkable. Your public movements are confined to a well-defined map of respectable streets, shops, and institutions. This strict regulation of women's public movement is a subject of great interest to historians. One interpretation sees it simply as a practical extension of the separate spheres ideology. The public world is dangerous and corrupting, therefore a woman's presence in it must be carefully limited and controlled for her own protection. The rules of public conduct, from the downcast eyes to the ladies-only railway car, were all part of a system designed to safeguard female virtue in a hostile environment. However, a more critical perspective, often informed by feminist history, sees this not as protection, but as a form of social control. By making public space so difficult and intimidating for women to navigate, society effectively kept them confined to the home. The threat of public harassment, the risk to one's reputation, the sheer logistical difficulty of moving in restrictive clothing, all of it worked together to reinforce the idea that a woman's proper place was indoors. The streets belonged to men, the home belonged to women. This division was maintained not just by ideology, but by a whole set of unwritten rules and practical obstacles. The scholarly debate continues over whether these public codes of conduct were primarily protective or restrictive. Were they a necessary shield in a rough-and-tumble world, or were they an invisible fence, keeping women out of public life? The very existence of the ladies' compartment can be read into ways. Is it a thoughtful provision for female comfort and safety, a recognition of their specific needs? Or is it a form of segregation, a rolling cage that reinforces their status as delicate creatures who cannot mix with the general population? You find yourself sitting in the hushed quiet of a church pew on a Sunday morning. This is one of the few public spaces where your presence is not just accepted, but required. Here, surrounded by other families from your social class, you perform your piety. You listen to the long sermon, your face a mask of serene devotion. Even here in the house of God, you are on display. Your bonnet, your dress, your quiet composure. It is all part of the continuous, exhausting performance of being the perfect Victorian lady, both inside your home and out in the world. Your public excursions are rare and carefully managed, but there is one arena outside the home where your presence is not just tolerated, but actively encouraged. Charity. Engaging in good works is the one fully respectable public role available to a middle-class woman. It is seen as a natural extension of your domestic duties. As the angel in your own house, it is your moral responsibility to extend that angelic influence to the less fortunate. It is domesticity turned outwards, a way for you to mother the poor and clean up the moral untidiness of society. Your charitable work would likely be performed as part of a committee of other ladies from your church or social circle. You would meet in one of your parlors, over tea and biscuits, to organize your efforts. The work itself would take many forms. You might be involved in friendly visiting where you would go, usually in pairs, into the homes of the poor in your parish. This was not just about handing out aid. It was a mission of moral uplift. You would bring a basket of food or some warm clothing, but you would also bring advice. You would instruct the poor mother on the importance of cleanliness, thrift, and sobriety. You would inspect her home, inquire about her husband's drinking habits, and encourage her to send her children to Sunday school. You were an agent of social reform, armed with a Bible and a bar of soap. Another common form of charity was the fundraising bazaar. You and your committee would spend months doing needlework, painting watercolors, and baking cakes. You would then rent a local hall, decorate it with bunting and flowers, and sell your genteel, homemade goods to raise money for a chosen cause, perhaps an orphanage, a hospital, or a mission to convert heathens in a distant land. The bazaar was a perfect female activity. It utilized all your domestic accomplishments, your sewing, your art, your baking, and put them to work for a noble public purpose. It was a rare opportunity for you to engage in a form of commerce, but one sanitized by its charitable aim. One of the more peculiar and telling objects associated with this work is the charity purse. These were often small beaded or embroidered purses with two distinct compartments and a set of rings that could slide to close one side while opening the other. One side was for your personal money. The other side was for the money you had designated for the poor. It is a physical manifestation of the mental accounting required of a good Christian woman, a way to keep the worldly money of your household separate from the sanctified money of your charity. Why was charitable work seen as such a suitable occupation for you? Historians argue that it perfectly aligned with the ideology of separate spheres. While men engaged in the rough and tumble of the economy, women were seen as the natural guardians of morality and compassion. Charity was women's work because it was about feeling. It was an emotional, nurturing role, perfectly suited to the supposedly innate qualities of the female sex. It allowed you to participate in solving social problems, but not through the masculine means of politics or economic policy. You were to do it through personal kindness, moral persuasion, and the gentle application of domestic values. The debate among historians often centers on the true impact and motivation of this female philanthropy. Was it a genuinely altruistic expression of social conscience? Many women were deeply religious and sincerely believed it was their Christian duty to help those less fortunate. They saw the poverty and squalor of the industrial city and were moved by a real desire to alleviate suffering. From this perspective, these women were pioneering social workers, laying the groundwork for future welfare systems. However, a more critical school of thought views this charitable work as a form of social control. The friendly visitor from this viewpoint was not just a helper. She was an inspector. She was an agent of the middle class, sent into the homes of the poor to impose her own values of sobriety, cleanliness, and deference. The goal was not just to feed the poor, but to make them more like us, to turn them into a respectable, manageable workforce. Charity, in this light, was a way of policing the behavior of the lower classes and reinforcing the existing social hierarchy. The lady with her basket of food was a gentle but powerful symbol of class superiority. This debate is ongoing. Was the female philanthropist a compassionate pioneer of social work, or a paternalistic agent of social control? Was her work a genuine challenge to the harshness of industrial capitalism, or was it a way of patching up its worst defects to ensure the system could continue uninterrupted? For you, as you sit addressing envelopes for your committee's next fundraising drive, the motives feel simpler. You are doing good. You are fulfilling your duty. It is a tiring but satisfying role, one that gives you a sense of purpose that can sometimes be missing from the endless routine of your domestic life. It gives you a legitimate reason to leave the house, and a quiet, unassailable sense of your own virtue. As you sit in your parlor, addressing envelopes for the charity bazaar, the faint, unsettling sound from the outside world occasionally penetrates the thick velvet curtains. It is the sound of a new idea, a whisper that is growing into a murmur. It is the sound of the new woman. She is a figure discussed mostly with disapproval and alarm in the newspapers and magazines your husband brings home. She is everything you are not supposed to be. She is a challenge to the very foundation of your world. This new woman is not a specific person, but an archetype, a symbol of female rebellion. She is educated, often having attended one of the new colleges for women that have begun to spring up. She is politically aware and might even be a suffragist, campaigning for the radical, unthinkable notion of giving women the right to vote. She is independent both in thought and in action. She might have a job, a profession, working as a teacher, a journalist, or even a typewriter in an office. She cuts her hair short, she wears more rational clothing that doesn't require a tight corset, and she might even be seen riding a bicycle, that great symbol of female emancipation, unaccompanied through the city streets. To you, and to the society that created you, the new woman is a monstrous figure. She is seen as selfish, unfeminine, and a threat to the sacred institution of the family. By abandoning her natural role in the home, she is seen as abandoning her duty. The popular press portrays her as a shrill, unattractive bluestocking who is trying to be a man because she has failed as a woman. There is a deep cultural anxiety that if women leave the home, the family will collapse, children will go unmothered, and the moral fabric of the nation will unravel. And yet, you might feel a secret, illicit flicker of curiosity, perhaps even of admiration, when you read a sensational novel about a clever, independent heroine. You are getting a taste of the new woman's spirit. When you feel a flash of frustration at the intellectual vacuity of a formal call, you are feeling the impulse that doctors her. She is the embodiment of all the unladylike thoughts and desires you have been taught to suppress. One of the most radical ideas associated with the new woman and the early feminist movement is the concept of marriage reform. These radical thinkers are beginning to question the entire institution of marriage as you know it. They are critical of the see-overture laws that erase a woman's legal identity. They argue for a woman's right to own her own property and to control her own earnings. Some are even beginning to whisper about the unthinkable, the right to divorce on equal terms with a man, and the right to a life outside of marriage altogether. This is the most profound threat of all. Your entire identity, your economic security, your social standing. It is all built upon your status as Mrs. Robert Finch. The idea that a woman could or would want to exist independently of a husband is a direct assault on your reality. Historians have long debated the origins and impact of this first wave of feminism. One school of thought emphasizes the role of pioneering individuals. Women like John Stuart Mill's collaborator, Harriet Taylor Mill, or the early suffragists who bravely articulated a new vision for womanhood. They are seen as heroic figures, fighting against overwhelming odds to win the basic rights that future generations would take for granted. Their story is one of linear progress, of a slow, hard-won battle against prejudice and injustice. However, another historical perspective looks for the roots of feminism, not in the public speeches of famous figures, but in the quiet discontent of ordinary women like yourself. They argue that the very ideology of the angel in the house, while oppressive, inadvertently sowed the seeds of its own destruction. By idealizing women as the moral superiors of men, the culture gave you a strange kind of authority. And by confining you to the home with more leisure time thanks to the work of your servants, it gave you the time to read, to think, and to talk to other women. The parlor, the very symbol of your confinement, also became an incubator for female consciousness. The same networks you used to plan charity bazaars could also be used to discuss your shared frustrations and to begin imagining a different kind of world. This debate continues. Did feminism begin with a few extraordinary rebels, or did it grow organically from the everyday experiences of countless angels in their gilded cages? Was the new woman a complete break from the past, or was she a logical, if extreme, evolution of the educated, morally serious middle-class woman? The parlor-maid enters to clear away the tea service, her movements silent and deferential. She is a world away from the new woman on her bicycle. And yet, she too is a part of this changing world. She earns her own wage, however small. She has a life, however circumscribed, outside the bonds of marriage. The world is shifting slowly, imperceptibly. The whispers are getting louder. You fold the last envelope, the name of your husband's house written on it in your perfect, ladylike hand. For a fleeting moment, you allow yourself to wonder what it would be like to sign your own name, to have a life that was entirely your own. It is a dangerous, thrilling, and deeply unsettling thought. The whispers of the new woman might feel like a distant, radical threat, but a much more immediate and tangible change is already seeping into your home. It comes not in the form of a political pamphlet, but through the gas pipes in your walls and in the cast iron gleam of a new piece of kitchen equipment. Technology, the same force of industrial modernity that created the smoggy city your home is meant to be a refuge from, is beginning to transform the domestic sphere itself. For most of your life, the home has been lit by candles and oil lamps. They provide a soft, flickering light, but they are also messy, smelly, and a constant fire hazard. They require daily maintenance, wicks to be trimmed, oil to be refilled, soot to be cleaned. But now your home has been fitted for gas lighting. With the turn of a brass tap and the touch of a match, a bright, steady, and almost magical light fills the room. It transforms your evenings, allowing for reading and sewing without straining your eyes. It makes your home feel safer, more modern. It is a miracle of the age, delivered silently through a network of pipes. Down in the kitchen, the changes are even more profound. The heart of the traditional kitchen is the grate, open hearth or a rudimentary coal-fired range. These are inefficient, difficult to control, and they fill the kitchen with smoke and soot. Cooking is a hot, dirty, and physically demanding job. But now you might have invested in a modern enclosed cast iron kitchener. This new type of stove is a marvel of engineering. It has a contained firebox, multiple cooking rings on top with adjustable heat, and, most importantly, an integrated oven with a door. For the first time, your cook can bake and roast with a reliable, consistent temperature. It makes her work cleaner, easier, and more precise. It transforms the possibilities of your dinner party menu. And as you saw on your trip to the department store, your kitchen is slowly filling up with smaller gadgets. There is the mechanical egg beater, replacing the exhausting task of whisking by hand. There is the new popular icebox, a wooden cabinet insulated with charcoal or tin, where a large block of ice delivered by the iceman can keep milk, butter, and meat fresh for several days. This revolutionizes your food storage and reduces the need for daily marketing. You might even have a mechanical carpet sweeper, which, while no match for a thorough beating, makes the daily fight against dust a little bit easier for your housemaid. And then there is the promise of the most revolutionary domestic technology of all, running water. In many homes, all water for cooking, cleaning, and bathing still has to be hauled in from an outdoor pump and heated over the fire. But increasingly, new middle-class houses are being built with plumbing. The idea of a tap inside the house that produces hot and cold water on demand is a luxury that feels almost decadent. It promises to eliminate the single most arduous task of domestic labor, the carrying of water. What was the true impact of these new technologies on your life and the lives of your servants? This is a key debate for historians of domestic life. The optimistic view, often promoted by the manufacturers of these new devices, was that they were liberators. They promised to end domestic drudgery, freeing women from the most grueling aspects of housework. They were seen as engines of progress, bringing the scientific rationality of the factory into the home and making it a more efficient, healthier, and happier place. From this perspective, technology was a force for female emancipation. However, many historians, particularly feminist historians, have challenged this narrative. They argue that, paradoxically, these labor-saving devices did not actually reduce the amount of time women spent on housework. Instead, they raised the standards. Because it was now easier to wash clothes, the expectation became that clothes should be washed more frequently. Because the new stove made complex baking possible, the pressure was on to produce more elaborate meals. The technology did not free you from labor, it simply changed the nature of the labor and created new, higher standards of cleanliness and domestic perfection that you were now expected to meet. This school of thought argues that technology did not liberate the angel in the house. It simply made her cage more efficient. It reinforced the idea that a woman's place was in the home by making the home a more complex, technologically advanced workshop that required her skilled management. The debate continues over whether the primary effect of domestic technology was to reduce labor or to professionalize the role of the housewife, creating new burdens in the process. You stand in your parlor under the bright, unwavering light of the gasoline. It feels clean, modern, and civilized. It is a world away from the smoky, uncertain flicker of an oil lamp. It feels like progress. You don't think about whether it is liberating you or simply raising the standards of your own performance. You simply know that it is better. It is another small, tangible piece of the perfect, orderly, well-lit world you have been tasked with creating. The gaslight in your parlor burns with a steady, modern hiss, a sound of progress. But it is not the technology that will be your most enduring legacy. It is the idea. You, the individual woman, will fade. Your name will recede into memory, perhaps noted only on a family tree. But your ghost, the spectral image of the angel in the house, will haunt the century to come. She will be the silent, unaccompanied guest in the homes of your daughters and your granddaughters, and even their daughters after that. A woman in the next century, in a land across the ocean, living in a house with electric lights and a humming refrigerator, will still feel your presence. When she feels a pang of guilt for wanting a career of her own, when she measures her worth by the spotlessness of her kitchen floor, when she believes her primary purpose is to be a charming, unsupportive helpmeet to her husband, she is living in the house that you built. The details will change. The crinoline will be gone, the servants replaced by machines, but the core architecture of the ideal will remain surprisingly intact. The pressure to be the perfect hostess, the perfect mother, the perfect wife will linger like a faint, persistent perfume. Decades from now, a brilliant writer, a woman named Virginia Woolf, will reflect on her own struggle to become an artist. She will write that in order to find her own voice, to put her own honest thoughts on the page, she first had to kill the angel in the house. The ideal you embody will become so powerful, so deeply embedded in the cultural imagination, that a future genius will have to commit a symbolic murder just to be free of you. Your ghost will have become the great adversary of female creativity and ambition. And so what will the historians of that distant future say of you, and the millions of women like you? This will be the great unresolved debate that echoes in their studies. They will sift through your letters, your diaries, your household account books, trying to understand the nature of your life. Were you a victim or a willing participant? Was your parlor a kingdom or a cage? They will argue passionately. Some will see you as a prisoner of a suffocating patriarchal system, your talents crushed, your spirit slowly eroded by the relentless demands of domestic perfection. They will see your accomplishments as trivialities, your influence as an illusion, and your life as a quiet tragedy. But others will look at the same evidence and see a different story. They will see you as a skilled and powerful manager, the CEO of a complex domestic enterprise. They will argue that within your designated sphere, you wielded a unique and formidable power, a soft power that shaped the nation's morals, its tastes, and its next generation. They will see your mastery of etiquette, your management of social networks, and your creation of a beautiful, orderly home not as signs of oppression, but as evidence of your expertise and your authority. They will argue that you were not a victim, but a pragmatist, an architect of a world that, for all its limitations, offered you security, respect, and a profound sense of purpose. The world outside your window is already beginning to change in ways you cannot imagine. The whispers of the new woman will become a roar. The technologies that are just beginning to enter your home will transform it utterly. But your ghost, the beautiful, selfless, quietly demanding ghost of the perfect housewife, will prove remarkably difficult to exorcise. It will linger in the cultural air, a silent testament to the power of an idea, an ideal that was at once a comfort and a curse. And so, the house grows still. The story is told. The century turns and the gas lamps finally dim, not just for the night, but for the last time. The ticking of the great clock on the mantelpiece begins to slow, its rhythm becoming the steady, quiet cadence of your own breathing as you lie in the dark. The edges of the parlor begin to soften and blur at the corners, the heavy velvet of the curtains dissolving into the deep, quiet fabric of the night that now surrounds you. The world of calling cards and crinoline nests, of silent servants and secret sorrows, fades into a gentle, weightless memory. Perhaps you are already there in that quiet, peaceful space between the story and the dream. You can feel the last of the day's thoughts loosening their grip, drifting away like milkweed fluff on a warm, slow breeze. The angel in the house has done her duty. She has managed, she has worried, she has performed, and now she can finally rest. All the rules of etiquette have melted away. All the anxieties have been soothed. There is nothing left to manage, nothing left to clean, nothing left to prove. There is only the soft, steady darkness, the gentle pull of sleep, and the profound, simple piece of a story come to its end. Rest now. The end of the article. Good night.